Part 1, Chapter 5 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. The Period of Universal Persecution. The political prostration of the Jews embittered them against the Christians. There was nothing in common between the Jewish sects and the early Church. The skepticism of the Sadducees and the disappointed hopes of the Pharisees combined to intensify the popular hate. The council in Jerusalem cast Peter and John into prison and put Stephen to death. A general persecution, under Herod Agrippa, A.D. 44, broke out, and James the Elder fell a victim to its rage. The Christians took refuge in Pella, beyond the Jordan. Bar Kokhba led a final popular Jewish revolt against the Roman authority, A.D. 132, but was defeated by Julius Severus, and Jerusalem became a heap of ruins. The Roman Emperor Hadrian tried to destroy the attachment of the Christians to the sacred associations of the city by erecting on Calvary a temple to Venus, and, over the Holy Sepulchre, a statue to Jupiter. But his efforts, while pleasing to the Jews, had no material effect. The Jews, now that all hope of national independence was gone, established a school at Tiberias, where they tried to achieve with the pen what they had failed to accomplish by the sword. Their misrepresentations of Christ and his doctrines formed an important element in the general literary attack on Christianity during the first 3 centuries. Christianity soon extended beyond Jewish bounds, and became a thing which might well arouse the fears of the whole Roman Empire. In Rome the Christians were regarded as simply a new Jewish sect; and when, in the middle of the 1st century, a disturbance arose among the Jews of Rome, both Jews and Christians were banished by the Emperor Claudius. Nero represented the popular hostility to Christianity. He was believed to have set fire to Rome, where the flames had full sway for 9 days. He threw the blame, however, on the Christians, and resorted to the most barbarous methods to show his rage. He even had some Christians smeared with pitch and burned alive, while he caused others to be sewed in the skins of wild beasts and thrown out to the dogs. The persecution continued until his death. Under Domitian, A.D. 81 to 96, a milder policy of hostility was observed, the oppression of the Christians being chiefly confined to exile and the seizure of their property. The 12 tables of the Roman law forbade the existence of foreign faiths within the dominions, but the habit had been to conciliate the conquered provinces by toleration of the existing religions. The appearance of the Christians, however, was the signal for revival of the old prohibition. The bonds uniting the Christians were close. Their separate services were declared an act of hostility to the country. They were accused of disobedience to the laws, and of a spirit ripe at any moment for insurrection. They were charged with immoral practices in their services. All popular calamities, such as earthquakes, inundations, pestilence, and defeat in war, were attributed to them. A popular proverb ran thus: Deus non pluit, due ad Christianos. It does not rain, lead us against the Christians. Tertullian has left this record of the Roman habit of charging the disciples of Christ with all possible calamities. "If the Tiber overflow its banks, if the Nile do not water the fields, if the clouds refuse rain, if the earth shake, if famine or storms prevail, the cry always is, pitch the Christians to the lions." Trajan, A.D. 98 to 117, continued the policy of his predecessors, but in milder form. He gave orders to the proconsul Pliny, in Bithynia, not to seek out the Christians, but, when charges were brought against them, to give them opportunity to recant, and, in case of refusal, to sacrifice them to the gods. The persecution under Trajan extended to Palestine and Syria. Under Hadrian, A.D. 117 to 138, and Antoninus Pius, A.D. 138 to 161, the popular fury against the Christians increased to great violence. While these emperors granted the Church no favor, Their attitude was less hostile than that of some of their predecessors. Marcus Aurelius, a.d. 161 to 180, was thoughtful and calm. He was a Stoic by profession, and, while he had no warm reverence for the national religion, he showed no sympathy with the Christians. He was repelled by their devotion to Christ and their readiness to suffer. He tolerated violence, and under him the persecutions at Smyrna, where Polycarp suffered martyrdom, and at Lyons and Vienne, in Gaul, took place. There was now a slight relaxation of violence, but under Septimus Severus, a.d. 193 to 211, the Christians were treated with cruelty. The persecution was widespread, and the martyrdoms were numerous. Alexander Severus professed to be an eclectic in faith, and regarded Jesus as one of the gods. He placed a bust of Christ beside those of Abraham, Orpheus, and Apollonius of Tyana. He instituted no active measures of hostility. Decius had but a short reign, a.d. 249 to 251, and yet he improved his time industriously by endeavoring to exterminate the Christians. His persecution was general, and as violent as that under Nero. The reign of Decius was succeeded by a brief interval of peace, which was brought to a close by the hostile attitude of Valerian, a.d. 253 to 260. Under Aurelian, Diocletian, Galerius, and Maximinus, the persecution raged with varied fury. Great political complications arose. The changes in the imperial succession were frequent, and new methods of repression of the Christians were constantly adopted. During the whole time, however, the Christian Church grew in numbers and aggressive force. From a.d. 64 to 313, when Constantine granted an edict of toleration to the Christians, persecutions prevailed about 70 years. All forms of torture and violent death were adopted. There was no security at home. The exiles were numerous, but the Christians carried their faith and life with them to their new places of abode, where they built up societies, which in turn became centers for the wider dissemination of the gospel. Christianity had conquered in the realm of political life. It was now safe from the hand of any Roman ruler. End of chapter 5.